Let me see. All right, we are recording right now for those who cannot make it in. So we'll maybe be on for about 45 minutes or so. Basically, it's going to be a discussion. And I sent out all the questions that I'd like you to think about, going forward, to give us particularly some feedback, as you think back about this particular project here. Again, just to review, that really what we were both trying to get you to do is begin to, play around with this idea of design thinking and creativity and what it really means for your own leadership development, but more importantly, what it means for you to begin to understand that distinction between divergent and convergent thinking, and why it's important to the planning process within any type of organization. And I think the Puccio book particularly gave you some pretty good insight into that process, and then peppered with the Kelly Brothers material, that this is what we wanted you to kind of, at least in a 10-week period of time, begin to play around with these particular ideas, because we think they're important. And to tell you the truth, I know from my point of view, looking at what you guys have developed over time and comparing it to other cohorts, you are doing a very good job, in at least exploring what this looks like. And I think that's the context, for what this is. And Dawn, I don't know if you have anything to add to that right now before we get into the questions.
Well, it's just in this day and age with the kids that we teach, and the old model doesn't work anymore, we have to be creative. We have to be open to new ideas from our colleagues and our kids. And the more open we are and able to look at things from a different point of view, I think the better off we're going to be when we're trying to get content across to those students.
So with that in mind, then, again, and we're just going to open this up for you to kind of make some comments. Some of your colleagues who could not make it have written some responses to this, and even if you want to do that, that would be good. As we both learn in terms of adapting with this. But I guess this is the general question. As you thought about your own personal activity within the design process, what did you sense as drawing upon 800? 625 or 845 actually, and 801. So any comments around that?
I guess I'll take a shot at that, Dr. G. The process of developing our learning environment, it did help to frame the thinking that we did as a group, in terms of the you, and deliberately going through each step sort of at least help me, rationalize the picture that we were trying to get to. And it's sort of, this idea of doing away with preconceived notions really helped, the ideas flow in, and there was almost no wrong answer.
Okay.
Right.
Also, taking the idea of systems thinking from 625 and the U from 800, combining those together, along with what I've learned in this specific course, kind of helped shape the overall project, because you can't consider an aspect of this project without considering all of those separate modes of thinking, without thinking of the larger systems at play, without moving through the U and getting rid of all those different voices, and without applying a creative aspect to it. It makes me think of the Married with Children theme song regarding love and marriage. You can't have one without the other. And in completing this project, you couldn't complete it without going through the U and without considering the different modes of systems thinking.
Okay.
They were all pieces to the puzzle as you put it together towards the end.
Okay. Other comments around that?
I have Eileen Ratner's here.
Okay.
What did you learn from the relationships? The one that's up on the screen there. The concepts that stands out in her mind are the major connections, as was just mentioned by Chris, between Theory U and creativity, breaking down the old mental models and letting go of the voice of cynicism and the voice of judgment. This is very helpful for maximizing the ability to brainstorm and think out of the box to develop a creative idea.
Okay. Yeah, and one of the things that I always wanted you to think about is that, well, when you look at 800, what it's doing is it's giving you, if you remember the iceberg model that Senge was utilizing there, it gives you a way to think about the components of design. So if you think about the underlying mental models or the aspirations that you have that emerge from a vision, and then you tie that into Theory U in the idea of the generative conversation, the co-initiating, and then the letting go, that what that leads you into then to think about the structural aspects of the environment. And again, those structural aspects are, whether it be the physical space, the way in which you organize work, or the way in which you organize what I call the flow of information or your curriculum, that they become important frameworks for understanding, the design process. But then again, they're also extremely important frameworks for thinking about your own current reality in relationship to where you work, the environments that you're working in, and they allow you, so in 800, you can go up and down the iceberg to one extent, the same way in 845 or 620, because 625 is morphed into 845, your ability to go down the U to go up the U.
Back up,
Yeah, that to me becomes the key, and that's one of the things that we're hoping, really stick with you, because again, this is your last leadership course that you have in this program that is specific to that, even in terms of your concentrations. So anything else about this particular question?
I would just chime in that there's not like a one-size-fits-all approach, and that I kind of view a lot of things from balcony perspectives, and I think that there's a lot of dance floors and balconies, and we can't put them all because we are just a small, there's so much going on in there. But you just have to be open and see what works best with your given situation and environment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember, I don't remember if it was one of the teams that used the like a Carnival cruise ship, or someone was doing that in their synthesis. That idea of multiple dance floors and multiple balconies really, I think, is a nice metaphor for the complexity of daily living that we all go through and we all interact in terms of our organizations. So yeah, I really think that's an excellent metaphor for thinking about it.
Or the multiple possible solutions to the problem.
Yep, definitely. So that leads then into, basically, what did you learn from working in a team environment? That this is, I told you, both of us said this at the beginning of this course, you would be functioning in a divergent environment and trying to keep you there without a lot of direction, but letting the team, figure out and evolve and move into a convergent framework. So what came out of this for you working in a team environment, especially virtually?
One of the things I would say was especially fun. We had a team with a mixed background in the sense some of us work in higher ed, some of us work in K through 12 or rather high school or K through 12 younger. And what we found was that each of us kind of took the frustrations we see on a daily basis and the leadership problems that we deal with, and we're able to come up with a model that I wouldn't say solves it, but at least attempts to solve the issues we all deal with on a daily basis.
And coming from those different environments, you also brought with you different knowledge sets to work with the problem or try to solve the problem. You might see in higher ed what someone in elementary wouldn't see, what a postgraduate would see something that someone in high school may not see.
Yeah, and I think that really accentuates that idea of, when Senge talks about working across boundaries. I think that to me is an important component because we give a lot of lip service to, to teaming, but the tendency or the mental model that many people walk away with teaming is that, it ends up only being a couple people doing it. As opposed to letting the team develop the culture that brings everyone into the conversation. So that's where the theory U begins to play, particularly if as you're going down the U, you're doing co-initiating and understanding, empathetic listening. That to me becomes the important component for the team environment.
So we found when we were working on our project that, when we were out on the dance floor, it seemed like our backgrounds being so different, we initially thought that there wouldn't be a unified solution we could all talk about and apply. But then when we stepped back and we realized that a lot of the problems that we had were pretty similar. In fact, that there was, I wouldn't say there was a panacea, but we found that the solution to the problem worked in higher ed, worked in healthcare administration. So there was, again, from the balcony, it turned out that we could solve, our one solution was many things. But when we were on the dance floor, we couldn't quite see that.
Right, and again, like I said, you each brought with it a different set of skills to attempt to solve the problem. And Eileen said she learned to be more effective in her generative conversation. And she also learned that she needed to keep an open mind to the new ideas suggested by members of her design team. And she also learned the importance of taking an idea and building on that idea. Use the ideas as building blocks.
Okay, good. Okay, so third question then dealt with this idea of, what are you discovering in terms of yourselves about creativity and leadership, particularly from this project? I think that stands on its own.
You had to have a picture up there where I think about falling.
Well, that makes you creative, not to fall.
Yeah.
So any comments?
I'd like to backtrack just one moment. I typed in the chat box my comment, but I'll just share it since I have two team members that are on this Zoom session. And one of the things I said was just similar to what we read in our 10 Faces text. It was clear in our group when evaluating group dynamics that we each had our own niche, or we each had like our own face or role to play. And that was really beneficial to the contributions we made when it came to like our end product in terms of like our design project. And that I feel like in terms of going through the U, I think we were really faced with individual challenges that could have been a detriment to our group, but we didn't allow it to be because we were able to be very empathetic And I just think that made our work even greater or even better.
Mhm. Yeah, I see what you're
Having
saying.
those different faces, what a value and what a detriment it would be if we all had the same strength or same face.
Yeah, great point. So I have my Zoom chat box open so I can see that. I forgot all about that. So you've been taking a look at that. So again, all right. So you've gone through this thing. You've done a course in creativity. You've read stuff about it. You looked at it. You did synthesis of your own literature review of some of these things. So okay, what is that relationship for you about creativity and leadership?
I mean, for me, it goes back to this idea of effective leadership and what creates an effective leader. And going through this, I keep thinking every leadership problem or issue is going to be unique to the circumstance, the situation, the people that are involved in it. And if that's the case, because of its unique nature, you can't use the same tried and true methods that have been attempted time and time again and have failed. You've got to come up with a creative solution with something that hasn't been done before, regardless of how outlandish it might be or how preposterous it may seem to others, that it might just be that outlandish or preposterous idea that actually fixes the issue. And in reading about different leadership issues and how different organizations have succeeded, it's been based on trying things that are outside the box.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's almost like the Einstein quote, about the problem is we try to, come up with solutions about bad ideas by using the same thinking that got us into that situation. So I think, Chris, you're right about that.
Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yep,
The definition of insanity.
that's right.
I would agree with Chris, but then I would also just add to that just between the two as a leader, just being open yourself to new possibilities, to new solutions, to new opportunities, and not, shutting things down right away, just giving them a chance, because you don't know what, like Chris said, what you might be sitting there going, there's no way that can work, might be the greatest solution to that particular situation. So, I just think it allows you to just be open to how you can change things because, like he said, like I think, you can't keep doing the same thing over and over. And so, I just think about that in my own profession in health and nutrition and wellness. Not everyone works out the same, eats the same, sleeps the same, does everything the same, and you still can have, everyone can still be healthy, but they're not doing the same thing to become healthy.
So Justin, listening to you, I'd be curious. So when you think back 10 weeks ago, how have you shifted then in your thinking about where you were 10 weeks ago as it relates to this process?
I'm not, well, I think I've always kind of been open. Just being a teacher, I know that you kind of have to adapt to each person's need. I guess I would probably say that I'll probably be more aware of it and be more willing to try new things because I'm a pretty, if it works, don't change it. But I guess I'd probably say I'd be more open, about that creativity and the changes. I guess I changed a little bit, but part of me thinks that I've kind of had that there from the beginning. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It emerged a little more for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, I think you articulated the fact that it's important not to, in a leadership position, not to address a problem with a preconceived answer or idea ready to go. And some people, they see a problem ahead, they say, oh, I know how to solve it, and they walk in there already having it figured out in their mind, which kind of closes them off to the creativity and the answers of the rest of the group.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. If you think back into 800, and I don't know, the ones of you who did not have me, if you remember covering the archetypes, the fixes that fail and things of that nature, those archetypes are rather interesting frameworks that tie into, what gets us in trouble in organizations when we have to come up with creative solutions to things, and not fall into that trap of doing the same old. So again, I'm going to recommend for you guys to go back, particularly in the Senge work, and take a look at those areas around the archetypes, because they are very good mental models for thinking about problem solving, and particularly from a creative point of view.
One thing I'd throw in there, as instructors, you both gave us this project and said the sky's really the limit. And where we wound up with that and watching the other projects, it really looks like everybody came up with this great idea of, okay, if we could have the way we like it, this is what we would like to see, but how do we bring that back to reality? I think when you look at leadership and creativity, you want to provide that creative process, that creative environment, so that people can throw out what we'd like to see. How do we do that with the resources that we actually have?
Yeah, and what you're bringing up is something that's extremely important to keep in mind, is that idea of creative tension. Again, in 800, we talked about, if you remember, Senge, and it was Robert Fritz that uses the rubber band as the example, current reality versus the vision, that what's in between current reality and the vision is this creative tension, that's where it all takes place. And that the more you understand that distinction and the more energy you put into one. So if you put more energy to the side of the current reality, that pulls the vision down to the point where you never move forward. Or if you allow the energy to go to the vision, understanding the current reality, it pulls the current reality closer to the vision, even though you never have the two meet. You just can't. It's almost impossible to do that. But it's, again, where the energy level goes. Does it go to the future, or in theory to the presencing concept, or do you get stuck in the current reality? And as Daniel Pink, I think, always talked about, that idea of the devil's advocate, that anytime you're a devil's advocate, you're really trying to pull and give more credence to the current reality than towards the vision itself. So that's another thing to keep in mind about this.
Dr. Gould, if I could jump in there 1 minute there. I joined in a little late, but I just wanted to comment with regards to creativity and leadership as well, specifically to this project. One of the things I looked at is with the whole concept of creative leadership, we may feel that that is something that we have that is already maybe true somewhat to our nature. But I think when it's a collective process, you're forced to stimulate new ideas because you want to be inclusive and to incorporate the ideas of all of the members. It seems almost that creativity becomes almost the expectation, because it's hard to remain steadfast in your single thinking, your mental model, when you're now incorporating the ideas of others. So I see where that collaboration, that is a critical piece to that whole concept of change and the idea of creativity and leadership. It kind of just lends itself to the process.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because really what you're talking about is how do you generate those generative conversations that are based in empathetic listening. And that is so hard for us to do, because so most of us are always taught that what you're trying to do is defend your argument, debate your argument. And when you're in a debate, generally there's a winner or loser. But when you're in a generative conversation, no, what comes into is that both sides try to understand each other's points of view, and then out of that emerges a new concept.
Right. And an evolution, whatever thought each individual brought to the table evolves with the interaction and interplay between the other members, and it evolves into what it ultimately becomes.
Yeah, and and it's kind of interesting to think about that now. When you think about the three divides we talked about back in 845, where Sharma talks about the divide between self and nature, self and others, and then self and self. And then, and particularly in the United States, if you think about that framework and then think about the political discourse that's taking place, and I don't care what side you're on, is that really comes out very strong in relationship to our inability to get to a generative listening point of view, as opposed to, it's us against them type of mentality. And if you remember in Theory U, Sharma calls that the reverse of the U is the idea of absencing. It's where we get locked into our point of view and there is never any growth. So keep that in mind as you think about that process going forward. So with that then, and really as we begin to think about this, through this design process, as I state here, really, what did you discover about any blind spots that you might have as it relates to your leadership development over time? And again, you think about it over a 3-quarter experience, and then think about those things that Sharma calls the blind spots that we're not aware of. So anything stand out for you that began to emerge because of this activity particularly?
Well, not just this activity alone, but through the 3 leadership courses, I've always been the type of person that I don't like group work. I'm one of those, if you want it done right, do it yourself type of people. I can do it all on my own. But over the course of these 3 courses, I've kind of overcome the blind spot of not wanting others to help and not thinking others can help. Because especially with this design project and all the different perspectives that we had to bring in, I couldn't have done it on my own because I only have one perspective. I needed the help of others. And so I'm kind of recognizing that my former blind spot of always being able to do it myself may not have always been true.
Interesting. Very interesting. Eileen Ratner found that she was more creative than she thought she was.
Yeah, Amanda, I'm reading your quote there, or your chat in the chat box. I'm curious if you see that as the blind spot that you were, experiencing, particularly with the idea of ambiguity.
Yes, I am very cut and dry. I like to know what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, how I'm going to do it, what's expected of me, and that's that. And when I would sit there and be like, well, okay, what do I do now? And everybody else was like, okay, well, where do we start? And I was like, I don't know. It was kind of, now that I look back on it, it was fun. But when I was sitting there, I was like, I can't stand this.
I always get that.
It was uncomfortable for you not knowing the steps that you needed to take.
It was very uncomfortable, especially with my own, when I had to work by myself. When it was a group, it was a little different because I had my group to rely on to be like, okay, we got this, it'll be all right, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But earlier in the earlier courses, when we had that ambiguity, and I was like, well, this is my first paper for this whole program. What's expected of me? I don't know. I'm just gonna type this, and hope all goes well.
Yeah. And is it going well?
I yes.
Okay. That's good.
I'm going to chime in again on that. I'm in the same boat as Amanda as far as ambiguity. I cannot tell you how many times in each of these 3 courses I have complained to my group members about ambiguity. I hate the ambiguity. I like having a plan that tells me exactly what I have to do. But one thing I've learned is that I can function in the ambiguity if I have other people as well that I can rely on, which is another growth aspect for me because I'm not used to relying on people.
Yeah, and don't worry, Chris. Going forward, you are going to be told what to do quite a bit.
That makes me feel really good.
But also, as a leader and in life, there isn't any laundry list of things that we have to follow. We have to hit each bump in the road and use our creativity and our ideas to get over the bump in the road, because the answers aren't going to be given to us either as adults or especially as leaders, as we try to lead others through a school system.
Yeah, and I think that's why the Linsky books are very good for you to think about. And as I think Justin was mentioning, that ability to jump between the balcony and the dance floor is very critical in getting that into your mind and becoming highly aware of it when you're in your current reality. It will help you greatly.
Dr. Gould, I had a chance to work with Amanda and Chris, so it's interesting to hear their perspectives. I don't know how we got anything done because we're all so similar, but I need structure as well. However, I think what I was able to discover this particular term is that I feel like I'm creative in my personal life or personal business affairs. And didn't realize that I could be just as creative in like a leadership and academic arena.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that was a blind spot for me, whereas now I can see how the two can really merge. And I've seen myself grow from working with, Chris to now being in a group with Amanda, where I actually don't have to have as much structure as I thought.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to really embrace the ability to take what I think is an asset for me in my personal life and apply it to academia.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, I was listening to you. I was thinking about, what I've always said to you guys. One of the major tenets of systems thinking is that structure shapes the behavior of people over time, and that you're in an academic environment constantly, and your perception of what school is about is based a lot about how you've gone through school yourself. But remember, and I think it was Peter Senge that always made that quote about that the problem with school is that it's not like life, because life's not like school. It's not structured. It is very ambiguous. It is, it's uncertain. It jumps all over the place. And we try to control it by certain types of structures. And the question that you constantly have to keep thinking about is the structure appropriate for all situations? The same way when you begin to think about the type of thinking that got us into the situation in the first place, and we try to keep using that same thinking to solve the problem, that's what you need to do. You need to think about that. Because really, if you think about it and you go back and look at that syllabus, the structure was there for you the whole way through. Because in that big yellow section there is saying what your final project was, it said, okay, here's what you're going to do, and here are the 3 areas that you need to address, period. But then again, what comes into play is our downloading. And that's a good example of what downloading is about. Well, I wonder what he means. I wonder what she means by this. I wonder what this is. Well, is this what school's like? I need a rubric. I need that. When in reality, many times, that's just the downloading that comes in from our own personal experiences of what we think school should be. So it's something else to just keep in mind as you move forward.
And what you had to do was there in the syllabus. The only thing was it wasn't micromanaged, and you weren't micromanaged, and you thought maybe you weren't creative before, and you found out that even in your professional life, you are creative and you can come up with creative solutions to problems that come up. And that was exactly the point that we wanted to try to get across.
I'll just say that you all taught me a very valuable lesson over the last 6 courses, not just these 3. At work, I've become very good at saying no and even delegating better, because that was one of my blind spots. I was very willing to take on a lot of new projects. And with everything that's happening through the education that I'm going through, I've had to say no. I've had to start parceling things out. And I think that's a great lesson that I've learned personally and professionally that I've taken forward. Hey, you can only do so much.
Right.
Yeah, and Kendall, I think your statement there, you know, in the chat box there, yeah, its structure does take many different forms. And the question is, you know, how aware are we of those types of structures? And it's the same thing where you know, one of the ways about thinking about systems thinking is it's more about understanding relationships and how they develop. And I'm talking about personal relationships, I'm talking about organizational relationships. You know, the ability to work across sectors is extremely important. So, okay, you're working in healthcare, but healthcare has quite a bit to do with education. It has to do with quality of life. It has to do, you know, well on how we treat people, how we think socially about people. But our tendency is, because of the way in which the structure has really, again, if you go back to the 17th century, we looked at the human body and we looked at organizations as machines. Therefore, you have all these compartments, and these compartments really don't interact with each other. And that's been some of the problems that we've had over time. And again, you know, I think your statement there about, yeah, structures do take different forms, but we have to be consciously aware of those forms. But also from a creative side and a leadership side, we have to know how to make structures adaptable to their environments that are emerging. So that's where the ecological, you know, way of thinking, as opposed to a machine way of thinking, really starting to come into play.
I'll just chime in. Just from working in higher education, I would just say, I guess just going through these courses, I'm typically aware of the challenges of higher education, and I guess I kind of see it more now. You know, people set in their ways, people don't want to change things, people don't want to try things new. It's like, you know, beat your head off the wall because it's like, this isn't working. We can't keep doing it. So I guess I recognize it even more or notice it more. I don't know if that's because there's more problems now, or since I've gone through the courses, I kind of recognize it easier.
Yeah, and my tendency would agree to probably going through these, because you've been exposed to some things, you know, that in many courses you never get. And that's when Ed Bureau and I basically put these together originally. That's what we wanted people to do, expose you to different types of frameworks for thinking about complexity and working in complexity. And, you know, and it's kind of interesting because I'm looking at that one statement, my blind spot is aversion to failure. But in reality, remember, we always would say to kids, you know, failure's good for you. You know, you learn from your mistakes. And the problem is we nail everybody for making mistakes instead of teaching them how to learn from them.
Right, Dr. G, that's sort of what I was thinking. You know, like, I think that was part of my problem, you know, like Kendall and Amanda and Chris mentioned that, you know, because the assignments were, I don't know, so like open-ended, I would sit on my computer and like stare at one sentence as I started it. You know, am I on the right track? And I just started it, and the whole time I was afraid that I might go down the wrong path, and that was almost debilitating.
Yeah.
You know, but like Kendall mentioned, you know, the I don't want to say group think, but like the process where we all sort of were brainstorming together, sort of opened me up, you know, to, you know, the process. So, I think about like the project is the tip of the iceberg, and what we did to get there. That was all below the surface. I just couldn't see it.
Yep. Yeah. Good. Yeah, excellent point. I think that's well stated. That again, that awareness factor becomes extremely important. And remember, and I don't know, in some of the 625 or the 845 courses, I would show Otto Scharmer where he's talking about journaling. And one of the best things to do in journaling is to take a pen and a piece of paper and just start writing. Don't think, just write. Because again, that aversion to failure is, am I saying the right thing? Because who cares where it takes you? Because that's where the learning takes place. And you find that out.
Direction that you can mold into a solution, how could it be wrong?
Or it might not work too. But how do you find that out? And again, you talk to any inventor, you talk to anyone who is an entrepreneur, they tell you they have more failure than they have success. But it's to keep learning from that. Well, what am I learning? I went down this road. Okay, it seemed pretty cool at the time being, but so what did I learn from that? How do you readjust? That's what that's about. That's what good leadership's about.
And that's where you talked about before, Dr. Gould, adapting.
Yep. Extremely important.
I also think one thing that I also took from all of this, from the start till now, is that building relationships. I've never taken like online courses, been through an online program, and the relationships I'm building with the cohort in itself, and the trust, because when you're working in a group and trusting one another, and that's my grade, and we don't, going into this, we didn't know each other. I can't physically, right here, you're not right here. So it's not like I can physically go to you and say, hey, I need your help. I have to trust you through a computer screen to, we're all going to be responsible. We're all going to do our work. And that's just that. We're all here for a reason. And I think that was a lot. It was tough for me at first. And now I'm like, okay, I rely on these people a lot. And it's kind of cool because some of the stuff that I've gone through this journey, through this EDD program, I rely on people in the cohort than I do my own family and friends. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Good. It's great feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if there's nothing else, I'm going to leave you with a little clip here. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this okay, because I have this new computer and I'm not sure about the sound, so I'm going to turn it up. So I want you to watch this, and I want you to think about when Justin talked about the balcony and the dance floor. As you watch this, think about what's being stated, and then we'll have a couple final comments at the end. So hopefully this works okay. Here we go.
What is the most astounding fact you can share with us about the universe? The most astounding fact is the knowledge that the atoms that comprise life on Earth, the atoms that make up the human body, are traceable to the crucibles that cooked light elements into heavy elements in their core under extreme temperatures and pressures. These stars, the high mass ones among them, went unstable in their later years. They collapsed and then exploded, scattering their enriched guts across the galaxy. Guts made of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and all the fundamental ingredients of life itself. These ingredients become part of gas clouds that condense, collapse, form the next generation of solar systems, stars with orbiting planets. And those planets now have the ingredients of life itself. So that when I look up at the night sky, and I know that, yes, we are part of this universe, we are in this universe, but perhaps more important than both of those facts is that the universe is in us. When I reflect on that fact, I look up. Many people feel small because they're small and the universe is big, but I feel big because my atoms came from those stars. There's a level of connectivity. That's really what you want in life. You want to feel connected. You want to feel relevant. You want to feel like you're a participant in the goings-on of activities and events around you. That's precisely what we are, just by being alive.
That was nice.
So it's kind of like a little final takeaway for creativity. And as I said, this is really your last course as it relates to leadership in itself. And obviously you'll be interacting with us in the future in some of the, the courses, 836 will be one coming up, qualitative research. You'll have your quantitative researches and then getting into some of your areas of that you want to work in, specializing in. And the ultimate outcome of this will be your dissertation. So that will be the cool thing. So I'm hoping both of us, that this has helped you stimulate your thinking a little deeper. To keep yourselves, really focused on, who you are as a developing leader, and that this material is, from what you've said to both of us, it's really had some good meaning for you, and hopefully you will continue to develop your thinking about this, particularly around creativity. Dawn, do you have anything?
No.
Okay.
That's basically what we wanted to do, and I think they, in their comments, have said that.
Okay, guys. If you have nothing else, that's it. Enjoy your short break, and it's back June 20th again.
So we all got A's?
Yes. Don't worry about the grade. God, you wrecked it.
You didn't even turn it in yet.
Yeah, that's right.
True.
That's good.
You all have a great couple weeks. See you next quarter.
Thank you. See you in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Have a nice evening.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Bye-bye. God, I'm myself.
Yes, you
I
are.
have no idea how that came up. And I got a different number for the class and everything. I didn't even notice that. I wonder if it's because of this computer. I got to check that out with Zoom.
I don't know.